The thrill of being with Maria, my sugar mommy, was intoxicating. Her opulent lifestyle, decadent parties, and seductive allure were a constant high. I was drawn into a whirlwind of pleasure and excess that felt like a dream come true. I first met Maria at a charity gala, a spectacle of wealth and ostentatious displays. She was surrounded by a court of admirers, her laughter like tinkling bells. I, a struggling artist with dreams bigger than my bank account, was merely another face in the crowd. But Maria saw me. Her gaze, sharp and penetrating, saw through my facade of indifference. It was a look that promised power, indulgence, and a life beyond my wildest imaginings. We were introduced by a mutual friend, a man who knew Maria's penchant for younger, charismatic men. He saw something in me, a spark, a hunger for a life of luxury that he knew Maria could provide. Maria was everything I had ever fantasized about. Her apartment, a penthouse overlooking the city, was a symphony of designer furniture, rare artwork, and curated perfection. She showered me with designer clothes, took me to exclusive restaurants, and flew me on private jets to glamorous weekend getaways. The world she opened up to me was a whirlwind of champagne-fueled nights, exotic vacations, and the constant hum of her wealth. I reveled in the attention, the luxury, the power that came with being Maria's chosen companion. I was her muse, her plaything, and her captive audience. Her eyes held a captivating twinkle, a mischievous glint that promised forbidden pleasures. The unspoken agreement between us was clear. I would be her plaything, and she would fuel my ambitions with her wealth. Maria enjoyed the game of power and seduction, and I played along, embracing the luxurious escapades she offered. Each day was an adventure, each night a decadent celebration. It was a dizzying high, a fantasy that I never dared to question. But the fantasy took a dark turn when Maria's playful demeanor shifted. It started with subtle changes, an insistence on more intimate, private encounters and an increasingly possessive attitude. What was once exciting and exhilarating began to feel suffocating. She started to demand my undivided attention, growing jealous of any interaction I had with other people. My social life, once vibrant and free, became restricted to her approval. She would scrutinize my every move, her gaze piercing and unforgiving. The playful twinkle in her eye had been replaced by a calculating coldness. The tipping point came when Maria invited me to her secluded estate under the guise of a private retreat. The lavish setting, designed to impress, soon revealed a more sinister purpose. The estate was a sprawling complex, hidden away in the remote countryside. It was a world of its own, a playground for the privileged and an escape from the watchful eyes of the outside world. The house, a majestic Victorian manor, was filled with antique furniture and ornate decor. The grounds were equally extravagant, boasting manicured gardens, a private lake, and a sprawling forest that seemed to stretch on forever. Maria, radiant in a flowing gown, welcomed me with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. As the evening progressed, Maria's mood changed drastically. The seductive banter, the playful teasing, was gone, replaced by a chilling intensity. Her eyes, usually shimmering with amusement, were now dark and focused. She led me down a secluded corridor, the heavy oak doors creaking open to reveal a hidden chamber. The air was thick with the scent of incense, and something else, a metallic tang that sent a shiver down my spine. The room was a stark contrast to the opulent grandeur of the mansion. It was a dungeon, a cavernous space lit by flickering torches that cast long, ominous shadows. The walls were lined with metal chains, shackles, and other grotesque implements that made my stomach churn. Maria, her expression now a cold mask, turned to me. Her voice, usually so sweet and seductive, was now sharp and commanding. "Tonight, my dear, we play a different game." I felt a knot of fear tightening in my chest, but I couldn't move, couldn't speak. Maria's words, delivered with a chilling calmness, cut through the silence. "Tonight you are mine completely." The fantasy, the dream that I had embraced with such fervor, had turned into a nightmare. The once charming touch of Maria was now a tormenting force as she subjected me to grotesque and savage rituals. The room, a testament to her twisted desires, was filled with pools of blood and a palpable sense of dread. The night was a blur of pain and terror. Maria, fueled by a dark obsession, reveled in my suffering, her laughter echoing through the dungeon. I was no longer her muse, no longer her plaything. I was a captive, a victim in her twisted game. She forced me to endure unimaginable horrors, each act more depraved than the last. The chains, the shackles, the whips, they were tools of torment, each one serving to reinforce her dominance. The dungeon, once a symbol of my submission, became a prison of my soul. As the night wore on, the pain became unbearable, the fear consuming. I was no longer the confident, charismatic man I once was. I was broken, shattered, my spirit crushed under the weight of her cruelty. The last memory of that night is a searing image of Maria, her face contorted in a grotesque grin, her eyes burning with a dark passion, holding a gleaming blade above me. The blade plunged into my flesh, a searing pain that filled my entire being. I woke up the next day, my body a canvas of pain. The mansion was silent, empty. Maria was gone, and I was left alone with the scars of her torment. I stumbled out of the dungeon, a broken shell of the man I once was. The walls of the mansion, once symbols of opulence and luxury, now seemed to close in around me, mocking my naivety. The world I had known, the life I had craved, was gone. I escaped from the estate, my mind a swirling vortex of confusion and pain. I wandered for days, a fugitive in my own life, haunted by the ghost of Maria and the horrors I had endured. The scars, both physical and emotional, were etched deep within me. The memories of that night, a constant presence, a gnawing pain that refused to subside. I eventually found my way back to the city, a ghost in my own life. The world that once shimmered with promise was now a bleak reflection of my despair. I sought help, desperately trying to piece together the fragments of my shattered life. But the damage was deep, the wounds inflicted by Maria's twisted obsession too profound to heal. The world of sugar daddies and sugar mommies, once a seductive fantasy, had become a chilling reality. It was a world of power, control, and hidden depths of depravity that I had barely survived. The thrill of being with Maria, my sugar mommy, had been intoxicating. But the truth, the sinister reality behind her charm, was a nightmare that would haunt me forever. When I was 22, I met Linda, a wealthy woman in her late 40s, who took an immediate interest in me. We met at a fundraiser, the kind of event where the air was thick with the scent of expensive perfume and the clinking of champagne flutes. I was there as a volunteer, helping with the coat check, a job I only accepted because it meant I could wear a suit and feel like I belonged, even if it was just for a night. Linda was everything I wasn't. She wore a dazzling diamond necklace that could have bought a small island, and carried herself with the kind of confidence that comes from knowing you can afford to buy anything you desire. But there was something about her, a vulnerability that peeked through the polished exterior, that drew me in. She seemed genuinely interested in me, asking about my studies and my dreams, not in the polite, dismissive way that some wealthy people do, but with a warmth that surprised me. I learned she wasn't super rich herself, but her connections were powerful. She had made her fortune not with inherited wealth, but by investing in properties for the ultra-elite, who often never stepped foot in the luxurious estates they owned. These were the kind of people who bought a sprawling mansion in the Hamptons just for summer weekends, or a French chateau to impress a foreign dignitary, seemingly unconcerned with the practicalities of actually living there. Linda would call me over to these sprawling mansions, insisting that I spend weekends with her. She paid me handsomely, $1,000 a weekend, to keep her company, and I didn't complain. I was young, still finishing my degree, and the money was a godsend. I was also curious. Linda's world was a glimpse into a life I could only imagine, a life that was both alluring and unsettling. Her favorite place was a remote estate in the Catskills, high up in the mountains, with high walls and massive, empty rooms that felt more like a fortress than a home. We'd drive up there in her sleek black Mercedes, the silence broken only by the hum of the engine and the occasional comment on the scenery from Linda. She never seemed to tire of pointing out the sprawling oaks or the majestic views. The estate, she explained, belonged to a powerful media mogul who only used it once a year, for a lavish party. The rest of the year, it stood silent, a monument to excess. I found myself wandering through the cavernous rooms, overwhelmed by the sheer size and emptiness. The furniture was opulent, but there was no sign of life, no personal touch, no evidence of habitation. It felt like a museum for the rich and bored. On our second weekend at the estate, Linda led me to a bathroom bigger than my entire apartment. It had a walk-in shower the size of a small bedroom, with walls of frosted glass and a showerhead that sprayed water like a tropical monsoon. She watched me with a strange fascination as I turned on the shower, the water cascading over me in a warm, soothing deluge. "Do you know how much these walls could tell?" she whispered, her voice unsettlingly close to my ear. I turned around, the hot water streaming down my face. She was standing there, arms crossed, her eyes fixed on the shower stall, a strange, almost manic smile playing on her lips. I shrugged. "They're just walls, Linda." She chuckled, a dry, brittle sound that sent shivers down my spine. "They're more than walls, darling. They've seen things." She leaned closer, her breath warm on my cheek. "They've seen things you wouldn't believe." I leaned back, uncomfortable with her intensity. "They're just a bathroom, Linda." She stepped back, the manic smile replaced by a look of disappointment. "You're so young, so innocent. You don't see it, do you?" As the water ran down my body, I noticed something. Deep, dark stains ran down the tiles, almost like dried blood. I stared at them, my stomach twisting in uneasy suspicion. "What is that?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Linda's smile returned, wider than before, reaching her eyes, which shone with an unnatural light. "It's nothing to worry about, darling. Just a little accident." "A little accident?" I felt a cold dread creeping up my spine. "They like to keep things clean here," she said, her voice strangely calm. "For when they come back." The words hung in the air, heavy with unspoken implications. I turned off the shower, the water suddenly cold. I didn't know what she was talking about, but I knew something was wrong, terribly wrong. That night I couldn't sleep. The stains on the tiles, the unsettling smile on Linda's face, the strange emptiness of the mansion, all combined to create a nightmarish tableau that haunted my dreams. I lay awake, listening to the wind howling outside, every creak of the old house sounding like a malevolent footstep. Linda was gone by morning, leaving a note on the counter, thanking me for my company, and offering to pay me for another weekend at a different estate. I crumpled the note in my hand, a wave of nausea washing over me. I didn't want to go back. I didn't want to ever see that mansion again. I left the estate, the silence of the empty rooms ringing in my ears. The world outside seemed brighter, more alive, after the oppressive gloom of the mansion. I drove back to the city, each mile taking me further away from the darkness that had settled over me. I never answered Linda's calls again. The money, the luxury, the company, it all seemed meaningless compared to the chilling truth I had glimpsed in the stained tiles. I didn't know what happened at that mansion, what secrets were hidden behind those walls, but I knew I didn't want to find out. The experience left me with a lingering sense of unease. The wealthy lives, the opulent homes, the silent emptiness, it all felt like a facade, a carefully constructed mask hiding something sinister beneath the surface. I realized that the world I had seen at those estates, the world of the ultra-rich, was a world I never wanted to be a part of. I went back to my studies, focused on my future, and tried to forget the unsettling weekend. But the memory of that bathroom, the dark stains, and Linda's unsettling smile, continued to haunt me. I couldn't shake the feeling that I had been a witness to something dark and dangerous, a secret that was better left buried. The truth, I knew, was hidden somewhere in the shadows, forever concealed behind the high walls of the mansion in the Catskills. Years passed, and the incident faded into a hazy memory. I eventually graduated, found a job, and built a life for myself. But sometimes, on a cold winter night, when the wind howls outside my window, I think of Linda, of the mansion, of the stains on the tiles, and I feel a shiver run down my spine. The memory of the weekend at the estate, A weekend that began with a dazzling necklace and a promising offer, ended with a chilling whisper and a lingering unease that has never truly left me. I still wonder what really happened at that mansion, what secrets those walls concealed. But I know one thing: some secrets are better left buried. And some truths, no matter how disturbing, are better left unspoken. One day, while browsing online, I came across a news article about the media mogul who owned the estate. He had been arrested for money laundering and other financial crimes. The article mentioned that he had used a network of offshore accounts and shell companies to hide his ill-gotten gains. The connection hit me like a punch to the gut. The accidents at the mansion, the cleaning that Linda had mentioned, the unsettling emptiness of the room, it all suddenly made sense. I had witnessed a glimpse into the dark underbelly of wealth, a world where power was used as a weapon and where the consequences of wrongdoing were buried, literally, behind the high walls of a remote mansion. I realized that the wealthy world I had been exposed to wasn't just about diamonds and champagne, but about something darker, something more sinister. It was a world of secrets, lies, and hidden truths, a world where the lines between right and wrong blurred and where the consequences of crossing the line could be dire. I felt a surge of anger and disappointment, but also a sense of relief. The secrets I had glimpsed were finally out in the open, the truth exposed for all to see. The mansion in the Catskills, once a symbol of my naive curiosity, now stood as a reminder of the darkness that lurked beneath the surface of wealth and power. The incident taught me a valuable lesson. It made me realize that the world is a complex place, full of contradictions and hidden truths. It made me question the assumptions I had made about wealth and privilege, and it taught me to be wary of the allure of things that seemed too good to be true. Most of all, it made me appreciate the simple things in life, the things that money can't buy, the genuine connections that matter most. The mansion in the Catskills might have been a symbol of wealth, but it was also a reminder of the importance of integrity, honesty, and the pursuit of a life lived with purpose, not just with material possessions. The memory of that weekend, the unsettling encounter with Linda, and the dark secrets of the mansion, still lingered in my mind, but they no longer haunted me. They had become a cautionary tale, a reminder of the shadows that can lurk beneath the surface, and a testament to the importance of seeking the truth, even when it's uncomfortable. And as I looked back on that time, I realized that the most valuable thing I had learned wasn't about the world of wealth and power, but about the importance of trusting my gut and following my own compass, even when the path ahead is unclear. She was in her early 40s, a successful entrepreneur with a taste for the finer things in life. I was 24, working as an intern at a small tech firm, and our paths crossed when she became a client. Her sophistication and charm immediately captivated me. Helena was far more than just a wealthy businesswoman. She was a mystery wrapped in luxury. After several professional meetings, she invited me to her opulent penthouse for dinner. The place was a blend of modern elegance and old-world decadence. The walls were lined with priceless art, and the atmosphere was thick with the scent of expensive perfumes. During dinner, her demeanor shifted. What began as polite conversation quickly turned into a dark game of seduction. Helena was a master at blending pleasure with pain. As the night progressed, she introduced me to a world of intense experiences. Behind her facade of wealth was a dark, brutal side that she expressed through elaborate, twisted scenarios involving chains, whips, and grotesque yet erotic art. Each session left me bruised, both physically and mentally, yet I couldn't stay away. Helena's blend of eroticism and cruelty was intoxicating. She reveled in her control, pushing boundaries in ways I never imagined. When I tried to escape, I found myself ensnared in a web of psychological torment, revealing the true cost of her affection. Our twisted affair ended abruptly, leaving me both haunted and exhilarated by the dark depths of desire and brutality I had experienced. underscore 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 underscore. I met Helena at a tech industry event. She was the epitome of success, a self-made millionaire with a reputation for being both brilliant and ruthless. I was just a lowly intern, but she took an interest in me. After the event, she invited me to dinner at her penthouse. I was hesitant at first, but curiosity got the better of me. The moment I stepped into her apartment, I was transported to another world. The place was opulent, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering breathtaking views of the city. Helena herself was even more beautiful than I had imagined, with dark hair, piercing blue eyes, and a body that could make a supermodel envious. We started with drinks in her living room, and I was immediately drawn to her intelligence and wit. She had a way of making me feel like I was the only person in the room. As the evening progressed, we moved to the dining room, where a sumptuous meal had been prepared. Helena was an excellent cook, and the food was delicious. After dinner, we retired to the living room for coffee and dessert. It was then that Helena's demeanor began to change. She started by asking me about my life, and I told her about my job, my family, and my dreams. She listened intently, and I could tell that she was genuinely interested in me. But then, she started to ask me more personal questions. She wanted to know about my sexual experiences, my fantasies, and my deepest desires. At first, I was hesitant to answer, but Helena had a way of making me feel comfortable. She was so open and honest with me, and I found myself sharing things with her that I had never told anyone else. As the night went on, Helena's questions became more and more explicit. She wanted to know about my deepest, darkest fantasies. I was embarrassed at first, but Helena was so encouraging, and I found myself telling her things that I had never even admitted to myself. By the end of the night, I felt like I had known Helena for years. She had a way of making me feel like I was the most important person in the world. I left her apartment that night feeling both exhilarated and confused. I had never met anyone like Helena before. She was intelligent, beautiful, and successful, but there was also a dark side to her that I couldn't quite understand. I tried to put her out of my mind, but I couldn't stop thinking about her. I wanted to see her again, but I was afraid of what might happen if I did. A few days later, I received a call from Helena. She invited me to dinner again, and I accepted. This time, things were different. Helena was more aggressive, and she made it clear that she wanted me sexually. I was hesitant at first, but Helena was so persuasive, and I found myself giving in to her desires. We spent the night together, and it was like nothing I had ever experienced before. Helena was a passionate and experienced lover, and she knew exactly how to please me. After that night, I became Helena's regular sugar baby. I would visit her several times a week, and we would spend hours together, exploring our darkest desires. Helena was always in control, and she loved to push my boundaries. She would often make me do things that I never thought I would do, and I found myself enjoying it. I knew that our relationship was dangerous, but I couldn't help myself. I was addicted to Helena's dark side, and I craved her touch. But as time went on, I started to realize that Helena was not who she seemed. Behind her facade of wealth and success, there was a dark and twisted secret. I discovered that Helena had a history of violence. She had been involved in several abusive relationships, and she had even been arrested for assault. I also learned that Helena was not as wealthy as she had led me to believe. She was in debt, and she was using me to pay for her lavish lifestyle. I confronted Helena about her lies, and she broke down and confessed everything. She told me that she was lonely and desperate, and that she had used me to fill a void in her life. I felt sorry for Helena, but I also knew that I had to get away from her. She was dangerous, and I was afraid of what she might do to me. I broke off our relationship, and I never saw Helena again. But even though it's been years since our last encounter, I still think about her sometimes. I wonder what happened to her, and if she ever found happiness. I also wonder if I will ever find someone who can make me feel the way Helena did. She was the most intense and passionate woman I have ever met, and I will never forget her. When I was 22, I met a woman named Isabella on a dating app during a college break. She was 35, with an air of mystery that intrigued me. We met for dinner, and I was quickly drawn into her dark allure. After our date, we went back to her place, where she showed me a side of herself that was both thrilling and unsettling. We spent the night together, and the next morning, she invited me to a shopping trip. At the mall, Isabella's behavior grew increasingly bizarre. She casually offered to buy me a high-end jacket, and paid with a stack of blood-stained cash she pulled from a folder in her purse. I questioned it, but she dismissed my concerns with a cold, sinister smile. She even slipped a few $100s into my bag before driving me home. Over the following months, Isabella's gifts became increasingly strange and extravagant. Money appeared in my account with cryptic messages attached, and she sent me disturbing, yet enticing, packages filled with unusual items. Her overt generosity was matched by a chilling, almost sadistic pleasure she seemed to derive from watching me use the gifts. When I returned home for another break, our encounter turned even darker. After an intimate night together, she left a gruesome note detailing her twisted fantasies and expectations, wrapped in blood-soaked tissue. Soon after, she disappeared from all contact, leaving me with the haunting gifts and the chilling memory of her erratic, dangerous affection. Despite the warning signs, I couldn't deny the thrill of being with Isabella. She was a force of nature, and I was both repelled and drawn to her at the same time. I couldn't help but wonder where she had gone, and what had become of her. As the weeks turned into months, I found myself unable to forget about Isabella. I tried dating other women, but none of them could compare to the excitement and danger that she had brought into my life. I couldn't stop thinking about her, and I found myself constantly checking my phone and email for any sign of her. One day, as I was scrolling through my social media feed, I saw a post from a local news station. They were reporting on a high-profile murder case, and the suspect was none other than Isabella. My heart raced as I read the details of the case. Isabella was accused of killing her husband and several other men, and the evidence against her was mounting. I couldn't believe what I was reading. I had suspected that Isabella was involved in something illegal, but I never would have imagined that she was a killer. I felt a chill run down my spine as I realized that I had been intimate with a dangerous criminal. Despite the risks, I couldn't stay away. I had to see Isabella again, to find out the truth about what had happened. I contacted her lawyer and arranged to visit her in prison. When I saw Isabella for the first time in months, I was shocked by her appearance. She looked gaunt and pale, with dark circles under her eyes. But despite her frail appearance, she still had the same cold, calculating gaze that I remembered. "I knew you would come," she said, as I approached her cell. "I've been thinking about you ever since I was arrested." I tried to remain calm, but I couldn't hide my fear. "What happened, Isabella? Why did you kill all those men?" She smiled, a cold, sinister smile. "Let's just say that they didn't live up to my expectations. They were weak, pathetic creatures who didn't deserve to live. Just like you." I felt a chill run down my spine. "What do you mean, just like me?" "You're just like them, Mark. You're weak, and you're easily manipulated. I knew you would come back to me, just like they did. And now that I have you, I'm not going to let you go." I tried to back away, but it was too late. Isabella's guards were already closing in, and I knew that I was trapped. I had come to see the woman I had once loved, and now I was going to pay the price for my curiosity. As I was led out of the prison, I couldn't help but wonder what had become of me. I had been seduced by a dangerous woman, and now I was caught up in her web of violence and deceit. I had let my desires cloud my judgment, and now I was paying the price. I knew that I would never be able to forget about Isabella, but I also knew that I had to move on. I had to put the past behind me and start fresh. I had to find a way to escape the memory of the sugar mommy who had seduced me, manipulated me, and nearly destroyed me. And so, with a heavy heart, I said goodbye to Isabella and the dangerous, thrilling world she had introduced me to. I knew that I would never forget her, but I also knew that I had to leave her behind and start a new chapter in my life. It was the only way to survive. I never imagined a weekend getaway could turn into a living nightmare, but that's exactly what happened. My girlfriend, Laura, and I had been dating for a few months when we were introduced to the seductive allure of Helena, an affluent older woman with a reputation for getting what she wanted. We met her at a charity gala, her presence radiating a magnetism that drew us in. Her laughter was infectious, her eyes held a depth of experience that intrigued me, and her conversation was sprinkled with the kind of wit that hinted at a hidden depth. She was everything Laura and I weren't: confident, experienced, and undeniably captivating. Laura, ever the social butterfly, was immediately charmed by Helena. The woman's air of sophistication and effortless wealth was something that appealed to Laura's inherent desire for comfort and luxury. I, on the other hand, felt a prickling sense of unease. Helena's gaze was too intense, her smiles too practiced, and her conversation flitted from charming anecdotes to thinly veiled hints of her power with unsettling ease. There was a darkness beneath her surface, a hidden layer that I instinctively sensed but couldn't quite grasp. Despite my unease, Helena's charm proved irresistible. She promised us a weekend at her remote estate, a chance to indulge and relax in the lap of luxury. The prospect of escaping the city's hustle and bustle, surrounded by opulence and Helena's captivating presence, was too tempting to resist. We agreed, fueled by a mix of excitement and an unnerving sense of foreboding. The drive to her estate was long and winding, the road snaking through dense forests that seemed to swallow the sunlight. As we approached the destination, a sense of unease settled over me. The estate, a sprawling Gothic manor with crumbling turrets and overgrown gardens, was more ominous than welcoming. It felt like a forgotten relic, a place where time itself had stopped, frozen in a perpetual state of decay. The moment we stepped inside, the air grew thick with an unspoken tension. The interior, though grand, was dusted with an unsettling stillness. Every surface was covered in a thick layer of dust, the silence punctuated by the creaking of the ancient floorboards. It felt like walking into a mausoleum, a relic of a bygone era where whispers of forgotten secrets lingered in the shadows. Helena greeted us with a warmth that felt forced, her smile wider than usual, her eyes gleaming with an unsettling intensity. "Welcome, my dears!" she exclaimed, her voice a velvety caress that sent shivers down my spine. "Make yourselves at home. This is your sanctuary for the weekend." Her hospitality, however, felt suffocating. We were bombarded with an endless stream of rich, decadent meals, extravagant gifts, and forced interactions. Helena's attention was obsessive, her gaze never leaving us, her conversation an endless stream of pronouncements about her own life and achievements. Her every word and gesture was calculated, designed to control and manipulate. The feeling of being trapped in her web, a gilded cage, intensified with each passing moment. The first night, the unsettling atmosphere reached a fever pitch. As the evening wore on, Helena, with an air of playful intrigue, suggested a private tour of her treasure trove, hidden away in the basement. Her voice was laced with a seductive lilt, a barely veiled promise of something forbidden, something thrilling. Laura, eager to experience the hidden depths of this seemingly luxurious estate, was instantly captivated. I, however, felt a cold dread creep into my heart. Something about the basement, the way Helena spoke about it, the way she carefully avoided revealing its contents, sent alarm bells ringing in my head. Despite my apprehensions, I felt pressured to comply. I didn't want to disappoint Laura, and I was still caught in the web of Helena's captivating persona. As we descended the creaking, dusty stairs into the basement, the atmosphere grew colder, heavier. The air was thick with the stench of damp earth and something else, a metallic tang that made me gag. There were no lights in the basement, only the faint glow of a flickering oil lamp, casting long, dancing shadows across the walls. The descent was a slow, agonizing process, each step echoing unnaturally loud in the absolute stillness. As our eyes adjusted to the darkness, the reality of the basement unfolded before us, a grotesque caricature of the opulent facade above. The walls were covered in damp, moldy bricks, a testament to years of neglect. The floor was uneven, littered with cobwebs and decaying wooden beams. But the most disturbing element was the collection of macabre objects that littered the space, their presence a stark contrast to the elegant facade of the estate above. Helena's obsession with control was chillingly evident in the basement. There were rows of rusted chains, thick and heavy, each one adorned with a leather collar. A collection of antique whips, their leather cracked and worn, lay beside a metal cage, its bars rusted and jagged. In the center of the room stood a wooden table, its surface covered in a grotesque collection of surgical instruments, their metal glinting in the dim light. There was a sense of violence and raw power in the air, a palpable sense of danger that made my heart pound in my chest. Helena, her face illuminated by the flickering lamplight, seemed to take a perverse pleasure in our reactions. Her smile, now twisted and predatory, revealed a glint in her eyes that sent shivers down my spine. "My little treasures," she purred, her voice a raspy whisper. "A collection of instruments for the art of persuasion." Her words hung heavy in the air, a stark confirmation of my worst fears. The opulent facade had crumbled, revealing the monstrous truth behind it. Helena wasn't just a wealthy eccentric with a taste for the macabre. She was a predator, a torturer, and she had chosen us as her prey. Laura, still caught in Helena's spell, seemed to find the basement fascinating. She picked up a rusted chain, her eyes sparkling with a mix of curiosity and fear. "These are beautiful," she whispered, her voice barely a breath. I tried to pull her back, to warn her of the danger, but it was too late. Helena's gaze locked onto Laura, her eyes cold and predatory. She reached out, her hand tracing the pattern of Laura's necklace with a possessive touch. "You're so beautiful," she whispered, her voice dripping with malice. "So perfect for my collection." Laura, her eyes wide with terror, tried to pull back, but Helena's grip tightened. "This," she said, her voice a chilling rasp, "is where you'll learn to obey. This is where you'll learn to be mine." The horror that followed is a blur of pain, screams, and terror. The walls were stained with our blood and screams as Helena, fueled by a twisted obsession, subjected us to a nightmarish torture. Her rituals were grotesque, her violence extreme, her cruelty unrelenting. The basement, once a hidden secret, became a chamber of nightmares, where Helena's fantasies of control and domination manifested in a real-life horror show. We fought, we screamed, we begged for mercy, but our pleas fell on deaf ears. Helena was relentless, her pleasure in our suffering evident in her every action. She reveled in our fear, her eyes glowing with a perverse satisfaction as our bodies grew weak, our spirits broken. The weekend that began with a seductive promise had descended into a living hell. The escape was a blur of terror, a desperate scramble for freedom. Laura, her body broken, her spirit crushed, collapsed at the foot of the stairs as I, fueled by pure adrenaline, managed to reach the safety of the upper floor. I stumbled through the house, disoriented and bleeding, frantically searching for a way out. The door to the main house was locked, but I managed to break a window, cutting my hand on the shattered glass. The night air was cold and fresh, a stark contrast to the suffocating atmosphere of the estate. I stumbled away from the house, my mind racing with images of the horrors I had just witnessed. As I ran through the darkness, the sound of Helena's chilling laughter echoed in my ears, a constant reminder of the nightmare that had just unfolded. The memory of Laura, her eyes filled with terror, her body battered and broken, haunted my every waking moment. The next morning, I woke up in a hospital bed, my body battered and bruised, my mind ravaged by the memories of the weekend. Laura was nowhere to be found, and the police, despite my pleas, were skeptical of my story. The estate, when they investigated, was empty. Helena had vanished, leaving behind no trace of her existence. The horrors I had endured were dismissed as a cruel prank, a figment of my imagination. But I knew the truth, the awful, undeniable truth. And the images of the basement, of Helena's twisted rituals, of Laura's terrified face, would forever be etched in my mind, a constant reminder of the horror that lurks behind seductive facades.